How is it possible that Tim Ferriss, a man who was sexually abused from the ages of 2 to 4, who was excessively bullied up until the age of 6th grade, and also experienced debilitating depression, and was, as he says, on the brink of suicide by the age of 20, to become an author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, make millions of dollars as a Silicon Valley investor, and become known as a national human guinea pig? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I introduce to you the story of Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss was born as all the greats were born, prematurely. He came out about 1 month early and experienced a tremendous amount of health problems. Upon birth, his left lung collapsed, and he had to have 5 blood transfusions just to stay alive. The doctor said he had about a 10% chance of survival. As a result, he was always known as the pipsqueak of the group, and because of that, he got excessively bullied throughout his entire childhood. To avoid the bullying at recess, he would sit inside of the room under the protection of the teachers and read. By the time he was in 6th grade, he grew about 5 inches in one summer and was able to overcome that burden. But he was still never able to overcome the burden of being sexually abused from the ages from 2 to 4. He was abused by his babysitter's son, something he didn't realize until he was much older. He experienced in his adulthood something known as a dissociation, which means that he completely separated it from his memory and his identity. So, he had amnesia, where he did not even recall the abuse until he was much older. During his childhood, he would pride himself on being able to withstand pain. In elementary school, he would press a Swiss Army knife into his thumb until it bled, and then move on to the next spot on his thumb. He wanted to see how long he'd be able to withstand the pain. But what he realized later was, well, he was just doing that to withstand his emotional pain. His physical pain, his stimulation, was really just a way of overcoming and pushing down that emotional pain. And this led him to be hyperactive. He said he had high anxiety when he was younger, and also he was very hyperactive, which was a very big problem for his parents. His dad was a real estate broker, and his mom was a physical therapist. And Tim Ferriss was born in eastern Long Island, and one of the things about him is that he was not the richest. He was born in the East Hamptons, and when you think of the Hamptons, you're thinking of the Hamptons. But he was actually a waiter at a local restaurant where he served the people of the Hamptons. He started to find his passion around the age of 15 when he lived as an exchange student in Japan. He realized that there were so many different ways of living, and he was only living one of them. While all of his exchange student friends from the United States only stayed for less than a year, he was the only person to stay for longer than 1 year. His experiences, his stories, those were the things that got him into Princeton University. After he got into Princeton, he started out as a neuroscience major, trying to understand his own brain and how he could hack it for the greatest success. Yes, he was interested in that, even at a young age. But he finally settled on his interest in Eastern Asian studies. Not a surprise. In college, Tim had to write a final thesis, a final paper to be able to graduate, and what he realized was he was not able to graduate on time. He would have to delay 1 extra year, and what he did was he became very, very introverted and very, very lonely. He locked himself in his room and realized that it took a lot of research and a lot of time, more time than he expected, and unfortunately, he became very, very depressed. In 1999, he experienced his peak depression, and at that point, he was ready to commit suicide. He actually ordered a book from the Princeton Public Library about how to commit suicide. The only thing that snapped him out of it was that on accident, the billing address and the notification went to his mom back at home, and she called him up very concerned. It began as a curiosity. He felt like he was curious about suicide and just seemed interested in it. But at the same time, he knew that he was ready to commit suicide. He was graduating late. For an extra year, he stayed on campus with no friends. He was lonely, and unfortunately, his girlfriend broke up with him because she called him needy, which makes sense. And this also explains why you see those Google ads for depression, even when you talk about other people. Just the word depression triggers a Google ad, and it's because just being, quote, curious might be, well, a cry for help. But throughout his college experience, he experienced many, many successes. Throughout college, he started something called the PX Project, which was a speed reading course that was designed for Princeton college students. He was able to make some money while increasing the reading speed of students by about 386%, as he estimates. One of his biggest failures was his audiobook. It was one of the first products that he ever made, and he made it for guidance counselors trying to help students get into better schools. Yet, he ended up selling only one copy, and that was to his mom. He believes that his failure on that was because he thought of his market instead of thinking as his market. So when he was releasing the 4-Hour Workweek, he adopted a different approach. He used Google Ads to test different titles, different subtitles, and eventually for Google to be able to match them together to see which one had the highest click-through rate. This is basic search engine optimization, SEO. He ended up finding a title that people liked instead of the things that he thought people liked. As a result, he adopted a completely new philosophy and also gave himself a completely new title.
I am a metrics-driven entrepreneur.
But it took him 5 years to graduate, and finally, he was able to graduate. After that, Tim Ferriss moved to California, taking a job in sales at a data storage company. He started a company called Adaptogenics Applied Bioscience in 2001, which eventually was making about $65,000 a month by 2006. Despite graduating as an Eastern Asian Studies major, he was invited to teach as a guest lecturer on entrepreneurship at Princeton in 2003. He started teaching in 2003, a few years after he graduated, and the class was about how small companies can compete with very large ones, perfect for what he ended up doing. It's interesting because he's teaching these classes at Princeton, yet he graduated with an Eastern Asian Studies major. One of the commonalities amongst all of the stories about Tim Ferriss is just he knows how to get in places. He knows how to do things. He knows how to finagle the system and finagle human psychology, which we will discover much later on. This class that he taught on entrepreneurship was his inspiration for the 4-Hour Workweek. This book was an international bestseller, and one of the important things about him is how the hell could he market such a thing? He was somebody who was not known, nobody had any idea who he was, yet he was able to sell about 2 million copies and become a New York Times bestsellers for years ahead. He inspired an entire movement, which is based off people doing what is now called dropshipping, buying things online and selling them and making an online store. He was one of the first people to do it, and he's laid the blueprint for how to do it, which is part of the reason why Shopify is such a success. Yet, he realized that he was completely burnt out, so much so that his girlfriend then put a business hours end at 5 p.m. sign. He went on vacation to rest, and that changed everything. What he calls for 4-Hour Workweek is called lifestyle design, and he wants to be able to help people, well, hopefully outsource their work so that they live the lifestyle that they desire. He found himself working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., working just way too often and putting in way too much time. And unfortunately, that was not the way that he wanted to do it. When he took a vacation and said, screw it, that actually changed his life. So he released the 4-Hour Workweek, and it was an absolute success. But how, you might ask, someone who's so unknown, so unpopular, and has absolutely no influence on the world becomes such an absolute success? How could he sell 2 million copies worldwide and have his book printed in 40 different languages? What did he do that separated himself from the others? So now we're going to break down the marketing tactics, the things that make Tim Ferriss special and the things that make him great. It starts with his relationship building. It starts with his networking. If Tim Ferriss had one superpower, it would be the ability to create strong relationships. Here is a quote from Jack Canfield, a man with 47 New York Times bestsellers, and not surprisingly, one of Tim's strong mentors.
I'm not the only master Tim reached out to over the course of his career, but that willingness to say, okay, I know that I don't know, and I'm going to find out. And what Tim's done in everything he's done is said, who knows the most about this? I'm going to go study with them.
You can notice that a defining personality trait of Tim Ferriss is that he can get into anywhere and he can do whatever is possible. He can make the relationships and he keeps them over time. And these are not your typical superficial business networking relationships. These are deep, meaningful friendships that he's been able to form throughout his life. Watch as he explains this himself.
The bloggers who ended up helping me with, let's say, the 4-Hour Workweek, I'm still friends with those people 7 years later. Mm-hmm. I found people I connected with, people I would be friends with anyway, who happened to be writing about similar things. And we got along, and we still get along.
This is the commonality throughout all of his experiences, as he ended up writing a book called The Tribe of Mentors, which is literally a book on all of his mentors and the interviews that he's had with them. He then started up a podcast called The Tim Ferriss Show, and where he has over 560 interviews to date. As I said before, Tim is someone who knows how to get things. He knows how to finagle human psychology, and he knows how to get into places. When marketing his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, he was sure that he needed to get on national television. So Ferriss looked for anything that could possibly get him on television, and he found something. It was the new book in 2007 that came out on Barry Bonds and his steroid use. Ferriss emailed all of the local news channels, NBC, ABC, CNN, asking them to give his opinion on their show, which was the fact that this book would encourage steroid use. He chose this opinion because it was reasonable yet controversial. Then he went to the local bookstore and begged to get a copy of the book early before it was actually released. He got to the point where he literally said he got on his knees and begged the store owners when they denied. Due to his persistence, they finally agreed. He read the 350-page book in one night and performed great in the interview. This allowed for Tim Ferriss to have some social proof behind his ability to perform well on a local newscast, which eventually got him on national television and radio shows. The second thing about Tim Ferriss is his ability to establish a strong reputation for himself. He's known as the human guinea pig, the guy who has the tools, and knows how to get things.
I understand you're a man that knows how to get things.
I'm known to locate certain things from time to time.
This is why he's so famous, and this is why he has such a large following. He offers such incredible tools and resources for people who haven't really figured it out themselves. He is that guy, he is the experimenter, and that is why everybody loves him. Below, I attach many resources and many tools in which he offers, and I highly suggest you check them out. So there you go. That is the story of Tim Ferriss, and that is how he got here today. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. This is Nick Lugo, out.